Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special episode of Battle Chads. I am Josh, and I'm here with my co-host Luis.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we are with George from the Chad Magic team, who's just come back from another successful RCQ win, but this time with Splinter Twin in Standard. How are you, George?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Very spot on description of the deck. Yeah, I'm buzzing. I haven't had a one and done qualifying season since Naples. So yeah, I've had a cracking weekend and buzzing to be back.
So obviously the Splinter Twin was a bit of a bite for this. Is actually Temur Otters, or what's the other thing they call it? Enduring Otters. So do you want to just tell us very briefly before we go into the cards and the makeup of this deck, what the game plan of this deck is? Because you'll probably see this a lot in paper, but not really see it online due to the intensive clicking that it would require online.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is at its core a combo deck. It is essentially trying to create a loop between Valley Floodcaller, Storm Chaser's Talon, This Town Ain't Big Enough, and some little otter army to basically get yourself over the line and create a loop which bounces your opponent's board away, creates up to infinite mana, and on the right board state, infinite otters and infinite card draw if you want. But it has, much like Splinter Twin, a backup plan of being a tempo deck, and that's what makes this deck so strong.
Cool. So, as we've talked about the deck, we've got an idea of what it does. Luis, do you want to just go through with George now the individual cards and sort of give a little, I guess, brief on what they are, why they're in there, and then we'll move on to the sort of sideboard. But again, when we talk about as our typical Battle Chads deck tech, we've included, or George has kindly included, a sideboard guide. So we're not going to talk about the intricacies of in this matchup we bring this in this matchup we do this, etc. But we will talk about tips and tricks, etc. But for now, Luis, if you just take away with George, talk about the individual cards in this deck.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about now the nice pieces that make this deck function so well, because there's a lot going on. It's, when you look at it, you're like, what is this mashup pile of random things on screen? When in reality, it is quite a strong and powerful tempo deck mixed with really powerful, just, I'm going to get you dead tools beating you down with that backdoor combo. And one of the things that makes this happen the most is good old Valley Floodcaller. Why is this card in here? What does it do? Why is it so great?
Well, what could be better than Jeskai Ascendancy than one on legs? Or in this case, a floating leaf on a wave. No, that is essentially what Valley Floodcaller is. This is your combo engine that also doubles as your overrun style effect when you're going for the tempo plan. So Valley Floodcaller is a 3-mana 2/2 with flash, which has essentially the same text as Jeskai Ascendancy. So it untaps your otters, rats, birds, and one other creature type which evades my mind at the moment.
Frogs?
And gives them frogs, there you go. And gives the team +1/+1, but the big benefit is that it also gives all your non-creature spells flash. So this is your proper combo component, and it allows you to go off with some of the other creatures, which we'll cover next up.
Then we have Enduring Vitality, one of the other functional combo pieces of the deck, right?
Yeah, correct. So immediately reminiscent of a card called Cryptolith back in the day, which gave your creatures the ability to tap for any color of mana. Little bit more consistency in that even if this dies, it comes back as an enchantment to give you that redundancy to go off on a later turn. And that's exactly what this does. It gives your board of otters the ability to tap, which when you've got Valley Floodcaller in play, allows you to gain some value and some mana sinking through the untap ability with Vitality on the board.
The Enduring cards continuing to show that they are very powerful, and none of them are to be slept on. And then my favorite otter of the entire Bloomborough set, Thundertrap Trainer.
Or Otter of Bolas, as it's fondly known. It sounds very weird because it looks like a real integral piece. The main thing on this card, it could literally be a 2-mana 1/2 Otter that draws a card and it would still be good. The fact it digs you for any non-land, your permanent is just a plus. Although it's not integral to the combo, it's another permanent that can be found and bounced as part of the sort of like value lines with this town ain't big enough, and it helps dig for both the combo pieces and your interaction as well. So it's a really important integral cog to the deck as a whole.
Then we have the nice Enchantments package, which is quite strong in this deck. We'll start with a very beloved one to a lot of the Chad Magic group, Up the Beanstalk.
Beans, baby.
I can't put it down. Yeah, as my my award with the Chad guys over the last couple of months, I got 57 varieties of beans, and this is just another one of them. So, yeah, no, Up the Beanstalk isn't a key card in the deck, but it, much like a lot of the cards in the deck, it has a number of modes. It both provides a really grindy late game piece to draw through the interaction where matchups like mid-range might keep your resources quite low. It's an enchantment to be sacrificed for bargain, for Torch the Tower, and it can just be a nice piece to bounce with this town ain't big enough to keep that card draw flowing. So maybe not as broken as it has been in other formats, but it's a really integral piece for some of the matchups that this deck comes up against in Standard.
Then we have probably the strongest creature maker in the deck, Storm Chaser's Talent, a sleeper card.
Sleeper indeed, but this card is by far the best card in this deck, and it's I get hated for this by someone, but I think this is the best card in Standard. In this deck specifically, the amount of value it draws in is just massive. In this deck it is a Monastery Swiftspear, it is a Birds of Paradise, it turns into an Archaeomancer, both in the late game and when you're going off, to recur instants and sorceries. And it came up a number of times over the weekend, but it becomes a Shark Typhoon. If you want to go to level 3, just pumping out 1/1 Otters whenever you go off with a cantrip or even like an Analyze the Pollen. It's so powerful, and it obviously is a core piece of the combo loop, which we'll go through later. It's just an incredible card, a really, really cool piece of design. But yeah, it's the best card in Standard at the moment.
I know for a lot of the newer players out there, George may be naming some cards that you've never heard of. I'll do my best to try and put them on there for you guys as well. Then we have a newer card, one of the room cards from Duskmourn, Roaring Furnace / Steaming Sauna.
Yeah, so this was an interesting one. The Sanctum of All guys weren't very high on this when they played it at the World Championships. But again, it fulfills a number of modes. Not as complex and in-depth, but one side's a removal spell, the other side's a card advantage spell. But one of the big benefits to having this in the deck is it can be pitched or sacrificed, and it fuels your Analyze the Pollen. So when you do need to gather some extra evidence, it counts for 7 mana value in your graveyard. So a really important piece. I went for 3 this week, purely because there was a fair bit of mid-range in the room. So having that option to just switch on the Sauna side and draw some extra cards was really important.
Yeah, just so I know it's a little harder to read on this format, guys, I'm going to read it out just so you have it as well. Roaring Furnace, the one on the red side, reads, when you unlock this door, this room deals damage equal to the number of cards in your hand to target creature an opponent controls. And then the Sauna side, which is 3 and 2 blue, is you have no maximum hand size. I love that. At the beginning of your end step, draw a card. So very, very interesting card that it does 2 completely different things. But it keeps your engine going while also being an early removal spell when you need it. Then the one-of, Bitter Reunion.
Yeah, so there's quite a few one-offs in the deck this week. Bitter Reunion and the Battle, which we'll talk about afterwards, are purely flex slots. These give you a game piece on board while also digging through your deck to find the pieces that you need. The plus side with Bitter Reunion is that 1 mana sacrifice, creatures you control gain haste. There are times where you just need that haste to add additional mana through your Enduring Vitality by turning your Otters into Birds of Paradise. And that came up a couple of times, as well as just being fodder for bargain. So yeah, really cool piece, and I went for 1 Bitter Reunion just to fill that slot nicely.
Then, as you said earlier, the battle, Invasion of Ixalan. It's a battle for a lot of the players that might not know, as I know it was introduced recently, but a lot of people are still kind of getting to grasp with them, is an it's almost like an enchantment that you put down onto the battlefield, but in this case, it's a battle, right? It's another permanent type. When you put it down, your opponent is defending it, and you are attacking it. It has, this one in specific has 4 loyalty, if you will, or 4 counters on it. Every time you attack it or deal damage to it with a spell, it removes that many counters from it. Once all counters are removed, it flips over and it does its other side. In this case, it's just a nice 4/3 dinosaur. That's how battles work functionally. Your opponent can't attack them, but they can remove counters by dealing damage to it if they so wish. I don't know why they would, but they can. That's how battles function, just so everyone's aware. Take it away. Why is this in the deck?
This was a new innovation. The Sanctum of War guys. Essentially, it's a 5th Thunder Trap. It helps dig for your basically your combo pieces. So your Valley Floodcaller, your other creatures in the package, but it also digs for your Storm Chaser's talent. I'm not going to lie, I didn't flip it once, I didn't attack it once, but I did recur it quite a few times, and basically recast it 3 times and found the 3 combo pieces I need to go off. And that's essentially why it's in the deck. Whether it will stay in, I'm not sure. It not being an enchantment is actually quite a big deal when it came up a few times this weekend. But definitely an interesting piece. And post-board, it was also very useful in finding some key pieces against some matchups. So yeah, new innovation, but it's still on the testing board.
Definitely the one of the most flexible cards in the deck. Then we have the interaction package, your sorceries and instants, or instants and sorceries as it's more commonly said. We'll start with Analyze the Pollen, a very interesting card in what it does, as it lets you get anything. What is this best utilized for?
I mean, so I'll cover both Analyze the Pollen and the card below it, Bushwhack, as well. Essentially, for the most part, you cast both of these cards. They are Lay the Land, which is you search your library for a basic land card and put it in your hand. Both of them have some upside. So for Analyze the Pollen, you have the option, as I said earlier, to collect Evidence 8. So exile 8 mana value worth of cards or more from your graveyard, and it turns it into similar to Traverse the Ulvenwald. It lets you search for any land or any creature and put it in your hand. So it gives you some utility early game to go and fetch a land to fix your mana, or find that extra land drop that you might need for next turn, or in the late game it helps find a combo piece. Bushwhack, on the other hand, the upside is it gives you a removal spell in the late game with a fight effect. When you've got some prowessing otters going on, it's quite easy to go over the top with this, and it turns your 1/1s into a general sort of threat and removal spell. So yeah, really good upside. Some of the original lists were running sort of 18 or 19 lands and going all in on these effects. I've moved away from that and moved on to a slightly different option, which obviously we'll go through next.
Good old sleight of hand.
Yeah, we can't get away from it. The one thing I do regret now is that I haven't got my beautiful 7th edition white borders on my roster. We've got a lot of them on my desk right now. Oh, they're just beautiful. They're just beautiful. So this is the big difference between this list. Oh, 9. Oh, yeah. Just not good enough.
Sorry, George.
But that's all right. That's all right. But this was the big difference between my list and some of the ones from the World Championships. We're playing 4 sleight of hand, and the reason for that is there are times in the game where you want to go for the plan B, the tempo plan with the prowess, and you might just run out of gas by drawing your Bushwhacks and your Analyze the Pollen. Sleight of hand fills that role really nicely in the early game by being able to dig for your early game plays or your lands if you need them, but in the late game it prevents you from drawing dead. Help filter through your deck to find, even if it's just a non-creature spell, just to re-trigger your Valley Floodcaller to get those extra points of damage in. Overperformed for me this weekend, and I'm really glad that I had just the 4 Lay the Land effects and had those access to sleight of hands. So yeah, if you are looking to build this deck, I would recommend starting with this and starting with the sleight of hand package over the heavy sort of land finders as such.
If you're a Phoenix Pioneer player, you might be used to this card. It's a very fun card. You know you want to try it. Give it a go. And then probably the most interesting little card in the deck, Song of Tontentons.
Yeah, so this one, the number of people I've heard say it was a bulk rare or a limited all-star, I'm just like, yep, but I'm going to kill you with a massive army of rats. Again, another multifunctional card. It is a little bit win more, which is the reason I've gone down to 1. But essentially, this is an X spell that is both a win condition. It creates a ramp scenario if you've got Enduring Vitality on board, or it just lets you win out of nowhere. It can also be a haste enabler as well. So if you've gone off with the combo, it can just be a 1 mana creatures you control gain haste, which came up quite a few times this weekend. It's really flexible. At the end of the day, any fireball effect like this is going to be great. The fact that they are rats and that they untap with Value Floodcaller is a huge upside. And it is just a really nice role player just to fill that gap, especially in mid-range matchups where they're obviously removing your game pieces, your otters, and you just need that little burst to get you over the finish line, whether it's with the combo or with Plan B, the tempo game.
Nice to see the little Pied Pipers come into play. Then we have the nice land base. Quite a few interesting lands in here. Some of them, they're just basic lands. Not a lot to talk about them there. But then you have just your fast lands, your Fabled Passage, which is a fetch land that doesn't see tons of play. How come this deck uses it instead of something a little different?
For the most part, it's purely mana fixing. We are in very unfortunate position where we need blue, red, and green mana available on turn 1. So obviously, the fast lands do a lot of that work for you, but Fabled Passage in the deck, purely because you have access to a lot of basics because you're running the Analyze, the Pollen, and the Bushwhacks. That's purely it. And obviously thinning the deck out when you're running a combo deck like this is obviously a little bit of an upside as well.
And then I noticed that you're not playing the Tarnation Vista, which I know is a commonly played land. What made you go away from that one?
Purely because we are not as heavy on the Analyze the Pollens. So Tarnation Vista is a mana fixer from, I think it was the Vault from OTJ, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's the big
and essentially,
cards.
Yeah, there you go. It's on screen now. Obviously, it's fantastic in this deck because you have a lot of permanents which have an initial effect and then sit on the board, but they also happen to be in all of the colours that we're playing. And the only reason that I'm not running it is because I was on 2 Analyze the Pollen and I went down to 1 for the weekend, but we don't have that utility to be able to fetch for it, and that's purely it.
Then we have the sideboard. Some very interesting cards. We'll save the very best last for last. We'll start with just Pop Formation, quickly becoming one of the best sideboard pieces in all of Standard. What does it do? How does it work? Why is it in the deck?
So Paw Patch Formation, it's an instant for 1 and a green, and it has 3 modes. You can either destroy target creature with flying, destroy an enchantment, or draw a card and create food. Much like most of the main deck, it's a really good modal option. Removal ×2, or a cantrip that also provides you a game piece, which can be sacrificed for bargain. Came up this weekend. It's a really fantastic sideboard option, and it helps shore up some of the more difficult matchups, or just give you some better interaction against decks like Demons, being able to deal with the Archfiend of the Dross, as well as both sides of the Annex was really important. So really, really important sideboard piece.
Makes a lot of sense. Then we have good old Negate, very well-known card at this point. Not much to say about it. Counters non-creature spells, good against opposing combo, opposing removal, that kind of style. Not much to say with that one. Ghost Vacuum, a very cool card from Dustmourne that a lot of people were downplaying, as Christian will definitely let you know. What do you think? Why this over a more expensive version of Graveyard Hate, or perhaps a stronger version of Graveyard Hate?
Yeah, so again, Scavenging Ooze would be in this slot, and for the same reason that we're not playing the Tarnation Vista, I went for the 2 Ghost Vacuums because it's a more powerful effect, and we're not playing that tutor package with Analyze the Pollen. One thing I would say, obviously, it's very clearly Graveyard Hate, but for those who are looking to pick up this deck, this card is really important in the mirror, especially if they are on the original version, which is heavier on Analyze the Pollens. Just being able to attack that graveyard, as well as threatening to exile an Enduring Vitality with the trigger to return it to the battlefield on the stack, can win and lose games. And obviously it also interacts with the level 2 for the Storm Chasers talent, being able to exile the instants and sorceries that they target. It's a really big deal. And obviously it's fantastic against Oculus, which is starting to be on the rise. So yeah, really, really good piece. I'm very glad that I had 2 copies of that over the weekend.
Would that interrupt the combo then by exiling the piece?
Yeah,
from
it
the
can
creature?
indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, if you remove the
absolutely.
thing that you're grabbing with Stormchaser's talent, you run out of a way to redo it, right? If they can't grab this town ain't big enough, makes all the change in the world.
Interesting.
Then we have the Flood Pit's Drowner. My favorite
So this
card.
was a piece.
I love this card. This card is so good.
This card is it's stacks and stacks of text, and again very flexible in this deck. You can bounce it over and over again for some redundancy and be able to lock down your opponent's creatures. But it's also removal that gets around protection effects, which can be really important against the likes of sort of the green-red Innkeeper's Talent aggro deck. Most part, that's what it's here for, but it's also a piece that's got a bit of value when you're going through the sort of value bounce my permanents back plan B, just to grind through.
And just before I go to the last three pieces, I just realized that we didn't actually talk about the instants in the deck.
Oh yeah, the really important part.
Yeah, we have the Torch the Tower, which is your usual removal spell, but has quite a bit going on with it. What makes this the key piece to use over something like Burst Lightning or a different style of effect?
That flexibility of mode. So it's not just a removal spell in this deck, it does work as a protection spell. There is a lot of Anoint the Affliction going around in the format at the moment. And the ability to sacrifice your Enduring Vitality or on occasion your Stormchaser's Talent, not only to get the additional damage and the scry, but also to save your Vitality is really key. I think this is probably the best removal spell available in Standard at the moment, and it's a really key piece in both protecting your combo and obviously interacting with your opponents as well. It's still a lightning bolt. It's a lightning bolt at the end of the day.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And then the very important spell that definitely needed to be talked about, this town ain't big enough.
Tabe. This is a real key part of the combo, which we'll run through later. It essentially is a 2-mana bounce one of your own permanents, non-land permanents, and bounce one of your opponents, or bounce 2 of yours back to your hand. It gives you so much value. It triggers up the Beanstalk. It lets you reset your Stormchaser's Talent, save your key pieces, and clear the board as part of the combo. It is an absolute engine with the rest of the deck, and we'll run through why it's so important very, very shortly.
And then the final sideboard pieces, we have Dissection Tool, definitely one to a head scratcher for some people.
Yeah, this is Batterskull Light. That's the best way to describe it. It essentially is a life gain tool that is very much recurable, and it helps also dig for your combo pieces. I managed to flip one against... what did I flip? I think I flipped a Vitality off the Dissection tools, end step, then flip it, and then go off against Mono Red in round 1 over the weekend.
Nice.
So just a really, really solid piece against the aggro decks.
Then good old Blue Sun's Twilight.
Solid card. We love a mind control. A 2-mana stealer, a 6/6 demon with flying. Feels great. Yeah, very good against mid-range decks of the format. Stealing a Glisser was also a highlight in some of my testing last week. So yeah, just a really nice flex slot and just something to bring in that they might not be expecting in the mid-range matchup.
And last but not least, the one, the only, Aegis Turtle.
Yeah. So I did some research, and I think I might be the first person to qualify for an RC with some copies of Aegis Turtle in their 75. So it's both a claim to fame and something I still can't quite believe I registered on a competitive deck list.
I mean, sometimes you just need a 1-mana 0/5. That's all you need.
Just need a wall, yeah. And that's essentially what this is. So the one thing this deck needs is time. If you have time with this deck, you win. The mono red decks that are going around at the moment are very much play my creatures and get them a little bit bigger incrementally, unless they want to waste a monstrous rage to get through an Aegis Turtle. It also gives you a permanent on the board. So a lot of the life gain effects don't necessarily give you that. So having a turn 1 play that you can later bounce with this town ain't big enough on turn as early as turn 2 is really key. And it just buys you that time. It's also one of the best cards against Screaming Nemesis, because it doesn't deal damage.
True, yeah. It's the age-old question. what would happen if your Birds of Paradise became a fat, non-flying blue turtle? And here we are. Quite the card.
Here we are. It
bolt
was a
this, though.
magical. Yeah, exactly. This thing ain't getting touched ever.
Nope.
But no, it was very much a meta call for the day. It came up once in round 1 and then sat in my sideboard for 6 more rounds after that. So
It's still cut downable, guys. All right, just don't worry. We have the answer. We have the answer to the Aegis Turtle.
I was just thinking then, how do we beat this card?
Well, we fly over it with our deck, Josh. It's quite the card. Right. So this brings us to how does the deck function really? How does it do its thing? How does it pull off its combo? How does it look flashy?
What is the combo?
Exactly.
Tell me.
Let's
mind.
Let's break this down for the viewers because I know it's a bit of a convoluted one. And it all has to do with Valley Flood Caller as the big card behind it all.
So I'll run through the main combo, which is the Perfect World. I have everything I need. And that consists of 1 Valley Flood Caller, 1 Enduring Vitality, either as a creature or as an enchantment, 3 non-summoning sick otters, rats, birds, or frogs, courtesy of either Trainer or Storm Chaser talent, 1 copy of This Town Ain't Big Enough, and 2 mana available to start the combo off. Essentially, if you have that board state, with This Town Ain't Big Enough in hand and potentially a Storm Chaser's talent in hand ready to go, every non-creature spell you cast generates 4 mana. And to then cast a Storm Chaser's talent, This Town Ain't Big Enough, activate level 2 of Storm Chaser's talent, costs 7 mana. The loop, once you start it, nets you 1 mana per activation, as well as potentially bouncing your opponent's board back to their hand, creating infinite mana, infinite otters, and 1 mana per activation, so infinite mana. So essentially what you do is you tap your Valley Flood Caller and your 3 otters to generate 4 mana. Your Storm Chaser's talent to untap your team, and then what you can do is you can activate Storm Chaser's talent to return potentially This Town Ain't Big Enough. You need it from your graveyard. You tap your team again to generate another 4 mana, and you use This Town Ain't Big Enough to bounce permanents, your Storm Chaser's talent, and 1 other, whether that be one of yours or one of your opponents. Untap your team, and you go again. It's 1 net mana every time.
I'm going to bring something up for everyone here. It's just getting it ready. Sorry, I know the screen might be a little blank. It's going to be something to help you follow along on what's going on with this one.
You know, if you've got...
We let Luis go ham on paint.
You're always going to have targets with This Town is a big enough, aren't you? Because you're going to make an otter. If your opponent runs out of permanents, then you'll just bounce 2 of your own things. One will be the Storm Chaser talent, and the other will be like a random otter that you made through the loop.
Well, it's up to 2, so you can just target 1. But as long as it it targets one or more of yours, then it costs 3 less, and that's the important thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's our Perfect World combo. Can also be replaced to make it mana neutral by just removing 1 of the non-summoning sick otters, so just starting with 2. Or you can have 2 Valley Flood Callers in play and 1 other otter, because it then creates 2 triggers of Valley Flood Caller every non you cast. So, and that gets you to your infinite loop.
I've put my little rendition of paint on screen for the viewers. You guys might not be able to see it, but here we have the Valley Flood Caller, and you can see there's 3, the 3 meaning 3 things here. And they have to be non-summoning sick. That's what this SS stands for. The Enduring Vitality, we put it upside down just because it doesn't have to be a creature. If it is, great. If it isn't, doesn't matter. Storm Chaser's talent, This Town Ain't Big Enough, and 2 mana. Here's the little combo. It is amazing to see on paint. I hope you guys enjoy it. Doing my best pirate software impression. And this is the combo. This is how it happens. So every time you tap these creatures for mana, so let's say you have exactly 4 things, right? You have the Otter and 3 tokens, and you have the Enduring Vitality. They're non-summoning sick, so you tap it for 4 mana. You cast your Storm Chaser's talent. You go down to 3 mana. You untap all the creatures. You tap them again. Now you're at 6 mana. You play This Town Ain't Big Enough. bouncing something they have and your Storm Chaser's talent. You go down to 4 mana, but you untap everything again. You tap it, you go up to 7 mana, etc., etc. And this is if you have the perfect world. Often, you won't have that perfect number of creatures, or the Storm Chasers will already be down on the field, or whatever is going on. Let's say you only have 2 creatures, two tokens, plus the Valley Flood Caller. Again, tap them, that's 3 mana. Let's say the Storm Chaser's talent's already on the field, so you play this town ain't big enough, that's where the 2 mana comes in. You bounce the Storm Chasers and whatever your opponent has. You untap your creatures, you're floating 1 mana. You tap for 3 mana, play Storm Chasers, untap, tap for 3 mana, and do it again, and again, and again, and again, over and over again until they get bored or concede or, something like that happens. Or obviously you make an infinitely large board with a bunch of otters and you beat them to death with one way or another. It's a very fun, trust me, it's a lot more fun to actually do yourself. Not so fun to be on the receiving side from it. I've been on that side way too many times. But that's the combo, and these are the important pieces. And this is just one of the many things you can do with this style of deck. But this is what's making it be such a powerful deck that is just ludicrous sometimes.
So, 2 questions I've got, George. One is, how often do you actually get the combo? Is the combo the main win, or do you win more on the tempo side?
It depends on the matchup, but over the weekend, I think I went off with the combo twice.
Okay.
The rest was with the tempo plan, couple of activations, and it was very clear to my opponent that I had lethal on board. So yeah, I would say twice over the weekend.
Second to that then, this deck is very similar to the green-blue tempo decks with the Eddie Merc Crabs and the Tellurian Terrors, etc., that do the same sort of stuff with the this town's not big enough, etc., making loads of otters, etc. Why play this version and not that version? If you instead of being, my point is, instead of being more focused on just like an easier tempo style game plan where you present a fatty, why not play that over this?
So 2 main reasons, well, actually 3. We'll give it 3. The first one is the mono red matchup. Not having efficient interaction like Torch Tower is a really big difference.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you ways to win game 1. The second one is graveyard hate. With Scavenging Ooze and Ghost Vacuum in the format, I found that not like the end all be all against the Simic Terrors deck, Simic Tempo deck.
Yeah,
does really disrupt you. And the third one being that this is much better into heavy interaction matchups. It can go off out of nowhere and on quite little resources. There's a number of times where I just cast a Valley Flood Caller and a Song of Totem Towns off the top in a single turn and just got a win out of nowhere.
Right, okay.
Fair enough.
In a format where we're quite efficient mid-range decks or low-to-the-ground aggro decks, just having that silver bullet was really important, and that's ultimately why I went for this over the very dear to my heart Simic Tempo deck.
And it paid off. Ed, do you want to talk about any sort, because we're coming towards the end of it now, is there any burning tips and tricks you want to just tell the listeners with this deck before we sort of wrap things up?
Yeah, of course. I've sort of hinted at a couple of them already. The first one is the Torch Tower. It is a fantastic piece of interaction, but the ability to save your Enduring Vitality is very important. And I would suggest, if you're against a matchup like the blue-black mid-range decks that are coming around, to bargain your Enduring Vitality and maybe an earlier opportunity than might be obvious to you, because they don't have a lot of interaction for enchantments.
Mm-hmm.
And just also bear in mind, like, you may need to target one of your own creatures during your combo turns to get another trigger or to net mana. It is a 1 mana non-creature spell, so if you are going off and you need that extra non-creature spell and you don't have the loop, it is an option, so just consider that. The next one is Valley Flood Caller. It is a wall of text, so it might get lost in there. If you're not got the loop ready to go, or you're trying to use the fair plan B, the tempo game, just bear in mind that you can go to combat, and then before blocks are declared, you can use your non-creature spells to then untap your team, so that you have blockers available if it's coming down to a battle on combat. Or you can use it to then set up your removal spell. So setting up a mid-combat pre-block bushwhack came up quite a few times this weekend. So just bearing that in mind, that you have that option to have a defensive play as part of your plan B. And the last thing for me would just be to manage your resources effectively. As you can see from the mana base, we have a lot of basics to obviously be fetchable off the Fable Passage and the Bushwhack effects. So just bear in mind your mana requirements, whether it's plan B or plan A, as well as what you could draw. The majority of the deck is green and blue, but just bear in mind if you do have a Torch the Tower, or you are looking to interact with your opponent and might be digging with a Thunder Trap Trainer, just to make sure that red mana is available if you find a Torch or a Roaring Furnace. They're the main ones. Honestly, I could go on and on about the different tips and tricks in this deck, and I would highly recommend looking at the Sanctum of All guys, because I know they've done quite a bit of work, I think, on the deck. So it'd be worth looking at some of their World Championship games and some of the articles they put out about the decks. There's tons that you can do with the set, but they're the big two that have come up over the weekend.
Yeah, there's nothing as fun as flashing in and up the beanstalk during your opponent's combat phase to make an extra otter, block with all your otters, and tell them, haha, I get to draw a card and destroy your board. What's up, homie?
The deck's super sweet, and well done on your victory with this deck. You have provided us with a sideboard plan, and the one thing that I've always considered with sort of combo decks is, when I was playing Dredge, etc., sideboard is a real key skill to how to, when do you arch from the actual sideboard plan itself, or how much you dilute it, and how you sideboard, etc. So the fact that you just provided it for our listeners is grateful. We're grateful to George. Luis, is there anything you would like to add, or George, is there anything you'd like to add before we sort of wrap up this Deck Tech pod?
Just don't forget to buy your copies of Aegis Turtle as fast as you can. The Rising Star, soon to be £10 a card. Nice.
I will say that I did make a killing on the Storm Chasers challenge, because I bought 4 for £25p each or something, and now they're I think what we say, £8 or £9 each now.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. Yeah.
Get your offer tokens.
No, only thing for me is get your Otter tokens and your Thunder Trap Trainer tokens, because I had 1 each and it was a nightmare keeping track of them. No, the only advice from me is get your reps in, practice the loop so you know it, and then focus on the gameplay so you don't have to think too much about the combo, because like I said, it came up twice in 14 games of Magic over the weekend. So it is a really fun deck. It is essentially Splinter Twin with a great backup plan. So if you like those sort of combo-centric decks with a good backup plan, then this is the one for you.
And for a lot of our listeners out there who, I know a lot of you are dreading the Kaito-filled rage of Standard in some ways. The card is very range-inducing for some of you. I love it. It's the best card in Standard, bar none to me. But if you definitely don't like Kaito and you want to keep him down, this is the deck for you. It is very good against Kaito. Turns out when he's tapping things and your card reads untap your creatures and you can do it over and over again in the same turn, Kaito's very ineffective at stopping that kind of thing. So take a look at that, see if it's up your alley, and maybe find your Kaito killer here. Want to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of Battle Chads. Thank you very much. I know it's quite a nice, quite spicy deck to look at. It's been a rising star since the World Champs, with Team Sanctum of All, helming this deck. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave your favorite thing about this deck, or maybe what you think might be the best deck in Standard, in the comments below. Share it with everybody. The usual, your friends, your family, your grandma, everyone you can think of, and it'll be fantastic to have you guys on our next Deck Tech.
Your abuela.
Yeah, abuela. Yeah, there you go. Grandma in Spanish. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much. Take care.
Cheers, George.